Today we will hear member statements from the honourable members for the District of Exploits, Humber-Bay of Islands, Mount Pearl-Southlands, Conception Bay, East Bell Island, Fortune Bay, Cape Hune, and I understand the member for Humber-Gros Morne will be asking leave to deliver a statement as well. The honourable member for Exploits.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, May 20th, 2019, a traumatic accident changed the life of Miss Judy Newhook. Judy was doing a renovation project using a chop saw when she completely severed her left hand. While Judy was frightened and weakened, she cried for help, and her neighbour, Mr. Gary Regular, appeared in front of her. Gary shouted to his wife to call for an ambulance. He then ran into the house, grabbed some paper towels and a butter knife. He immediately tied the fabric to Judy's arm, creating a tourniquet to control the blood flow, and used the butter knife to tighten the tourniquet. As the blood flow slowed, Gary retrieved the severed arm, retrieved the severed hand, and placed it on ice until the ambulance arrived. Mr. Speaker, I'd like for all members in the House to acknowledge the quick actions of Mr. Gary Regular.
The honourable member for Humber-Bay of Islands.
Mr. Speaker, we all know volunteers are the heart and soul of every community. While they are often involved in raising money for support their own organizations and programs, there are many times they reach out to help others in need. I rise in this honourable House today to recognise one of those such groups, the Meadows Recreation Committee. On Saturday, September 28th, the Recreation Committee held its first annual Shannon Tucker Memorial Ball Hockey Tournament. Shannon passed away on September 3rd after a brief battle with cancer at the age of 30. While Shannon grew up in Meadows, and most of his family still reside there, he resided in Bayvert for the past 3 years, where he was a volunteer firefighter in Bayvert and in Meadows. Players throughout the Bay of Islands and a few from the Northern Peninsula came together to show their support for the family and this great cause. The success of the event surpassed even the committee's expectation, with $2,000 raised that day. All proceeds raised were put towards a scholarship that has been set up for Shannon's 8-month-old daughter, Alexi. I ask all members to join me in congratulating the Meadows Recreation Committee and everybody involved in making this a truly successful event in Shannon's name. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mount Pearl-Southlands.
Mr. Speaker, this coming Saturday, hundreds of players and coaches from the Mount Pearl Minor Hockey Association will be hitting the doorsteps throughout the city of Mount Pearl, as well as the Southlands and Southbrook areas, as part of their 8th annual Big Give community food drive. Once again this year, they will be joined by a number of other sport and community groups, as well as many individual volunteers. In addition to door-to-door collection, there will be food bins set up at Mount Pearl's 4 grocery stores throughout the day. All food and monetary donations will be in support of our 3 local food banks located at St. Peter's Parish, Mary Queen the World, and the Salvation Army. This is a tremendous initiative which not only fills a very real need, but also teaches these young players the importance of sharing with others and in giving back to their community. I certainly encourage all citizens to please give generously to this very worthwhile initiative. For residents who may not be home on Saturday morning, I encourage them to place their non-perishable items in a plastic bag, hang it off their doorknob, or lay it on their front step, and a volunteer will pick it up when they canvass the neighbourhood. I ask all members of this honourable House to join me in commending the Mount Pearl Minor Hockey Association for taking up the challenge to ensure that nobody goes hungry in our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Conception Bay, East Bell Island.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand today to acknowledge an organisation that is not only important in my district, but in all districts in our province. I speak of the Royal Canadian Legion movement. The legions in our province represent tens of thousands of veterans and volunteer legionnaires who daily volunteer to ensure support for veterans and their families, while also educating educational institutions, youth organisations and the general public about the role past and present members of our various branches of the military have played and continue to play in ensuring the protection of our freedoms. Legions also are key contributors to our communities that they are situated in through their involvement in other community activities such as schools, community events, social agencies, and their contributions to the economy of the provincial movement. In our province, they employ hundreds of individuals, offering dozens of programs to citizens and generate tens of millions of dollars in resources each year. A few weeks ago, we witnessed the true value of our Legions and their volunteers with the nearly 100 Remembrance Day ceremonies organised or sponsored by a branch of the Canadian Legion in our province. The professional, classy, respectful manner in which our Legions honour our veterans on Remembrance Day is a testament to the volunteer members of this great organisation. I ask all members to join me in this House in congratulating and thanking the members of the Royal Canadian Legion movement in our province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Fortune Bay Cape Lahune.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize a noted citizen of Galtas, Mr. Adolphe Krant. Mr. Krant was born in Galtas in 1938, went to school there at a one-room school at what people of the area called Schoolhouse Point. He became a teacher in 1959 and worked with our young people for over 40 years in Galtas in a profession that, according to Mr. Krant, he came to love. His community was a vibrant one back then, when Galtas being in the centre of the cod fishery. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Krant always believed that the people of the area and the residents of Galtas was a memory worth preserving, and he decided to take up his passion for the history of Galtas and his people in paint, and paint he did. His memories have been preserved in paint and have become a visual history of Galtas. In June of this year, I had the pleasure to attend the grand opening of an exhibit of his paintings and his book, his visual history of Galtas, titled The Golden Town. Mr. Speaker, I ask all honourable members in congratulating Mr. Krant and thank him for his preservation of the memory of our people and the history of Galtas, the Golden Town.
The Honourable the Premier by leave.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in this honourable House today to pay tribute to a community leader and a dear friend of mine, Clyde Williams, known in Deer Lake as Stump. Clyde was widely known for his involvement in hockey in this province, and he was an avid volunteer and a fundraiser in the Deer Lake area. Stump's man cave was famous, a common drop-in place for friends, and it could happen at any time during the day. Clyde will forever be remembered for his commitment and passion in the roles that he took on, from being a husband, a father, grandfather, right down to organizing a local golf or hockey tournament. Clyde gave you everything he had, and he always had your back. At Clyde's funeral on October the 30th, tributes were read of those thinking of Clyde's family. One tribute in particular that Clyde would be proud of was a message from Kyle Dubas. Of course, he's the general manager of Clyde's beloved Toronto Maple Leafs, who sent condolences to his family. Now, Clyde met Mr. Dubas just recently in St. John's at the training camp. He had a brief conversation with Clyde, who had a lasting impression on Mr. Dubas. It was regarding Clyde's vision on how to fix the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mr. Speaker, today I ask all honourable members of this House to keep his wife Jean, his children Chuck, Luke, and Beth, and their families in our thoughts and our prayers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.